You're listening to the AC Pulse, where we don't just spill the tea, we publish the receipts. Look out for our Patreon. It's already launched. Email us if you have any questions. This episode is part 2 with Carly Sinn, a Denver-based artist, intuitive, multidimensional disruptor, and future NYC grad. Let's give it up for Carly. Yes, queen. If you missed part 1, go back, catch up, because part 2 dives deeper into the cosmic trenches, art, intuition, survival, and the systems trying to dim the brightest lights. From living on instinct to confronting the gatekeepers in Denver's art scene, this isn't just a conversation. It's a reclamation. Okay, so in this new world we're building, one that's more equitable, more imaginative, and honestly, just more human. I want to zoom out for a second. When you think about the systems we're trying to break free from, I'm talking about patriarchy, classism, white supremacy, all of it. How do you see people in positions of power, men, the affluent, the elite, the so-called upper echelon, non-marginalized folks? How do you see them showing up in this new world? What does meaningful support actually look like coming from those groups? Especially for you as a white woman who's actively choosing to unlearn and show up. How do you navigate that space without taking up space? And lastly, what would rising up look like to you? Not just for the oppressed, but for the people with privilege who have been sitting here comfortably for too long.
Yeah, I think it's a big moment of meeting non-minorities, white people, myself included sometimes, just being able to discern when it's time to step aside, when it's time to step back. And these people that do have access to a platform, that have access to money, that have access to the resources, instead of continuing to use that to platform themselves, they need to step aside and use that to platform others and other voices that have been excluded. So I think that's what it looks like, is just noticing that it's kind of like this sort of a feeling like the tide comes in and out, and there's like a time to step back, and there's a time like to push people forward. And that's how I'd love to see things go.
Right? Yeah, there is a dance to it. No pun intended. Not just a one-time gesture or a performative pose, but a rhythm that has to be learned, practiced, and embodied, because real solidarity isn't instinctual for those who have never had to survive. And if you're not willing to stumble, sweat, or sit one out when needed, then you're not really in the dance.
Yeah, and it's not always one person leading the dance the whole time. It's more of like a leading and a following, and being more receptive to that listening practice of it.
Exactly. That's how we really navigate everyone's authenticity. It's not about one voice dominating. It's about creating space for a rhythm that changes hands. Because when we're actually listening, like really listening, we stop assuming that leadership has to look like control. And I think that's where folks with privilege, especially, get stuck. It's not just about stepping back. It's about realizing that the current steps they were taught, they were never the whole dance. And sometimes sitting in the stillness, that is where the real reckoning begins.
Yeah. Because I also think too, when non-minorities or people of privilege have an opportunity to step back and be more receptive, I think that gives them an opportunity to be more contemplative about maybe how the systems we currently have operating are also harming them. And, how could the people that need to step forward in this moment offer a space that they can also more authentically step into? Because these systems are really just hurting everyone. And if people just keep continuing to push forward, it's just going to keep feeling violent.
Yes, that was powerful. You said a lot of powerful things this episode about listening, about moving with rather than ahead of others. But I do want to bring it back to you for a second. As a white woman, when was that moment when you really recognized yourself? And not just as a white woman navigating these systems, but as someone whose body is already politicized just by existing in certain spaces. When did that click for you? That your body, your presence, your skin wasn't neutral and maybe never has been? What did that reclamation start to look like from there? Not just intellectually, but physically, spiritually, in how you moved through the world.
I love that. Well, I think the body is very, very political already, especially the ways in which religion and kind of governing ideologies have shamed the body so much that I think it's a huge act of reclamation to reclaim the body as a vehicle of expression and just an experience of the human experience, really. So being a dancer feels incredibly powerful in that way, of being able to bring the body into the conversation, and especially the female body, that there's just been so much politicized around the female body for centuries. I think it's powerful to own and really inhabit the experience of a female body and the totality of that.
This episode of the AC Pulse is unofficially brought to you by Satur, trademark, the revolutionary new pill that makes you question everything. Side effects may include rage at capitalism, sudden awareness of nonprofit hypocrisy, and an uncontrollable urge to burn your mission statement. Ask your funder if Satur is right for your grant application. Satur, cuando feliz que la revolución ne cesa jamais venance. When you realize the revolution was never going to be funded. Now back to the show. Welcome back to the AC Pulse. So far, we've talked embodiment, identity, and systems, but I want to zoom back the lens a bit because who we are today it didn't just start with us. It started around us. Carly, if you're open to it, can we talk a bit about your childhood? And what were some of the early messages, maybe environments, or even relationships that shaped you? How do you think they influenced the way you show up in the world now as an artist, a white woman, a healer, and a true disruptor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I laugh just because I think me being a chaplain is kind of a hilarious kind of cosmic joke. And it does. I think, first of all, I think it's incredibly subversive for women to step into a space of religion, and especially into a space of spiritual authority, just because so often the heteropatriarchal religions have been used against us and against our bodies for so long, that I think it's incredibly powerful for women to own that space of spirituality and religion. And that in and of itself, I think, is subversive. And that does relate to how I feel as an artist too. Like, I think art in and of itself is a subversive act. And so I think a woman like owning a space of spirituality is also a subversive act. And, you know, it's kind of just, art is about exploring and asking questions. And I think that's kind of how I approach my role as a chaplain, which I still don't, the word chaplain is such a hot button word because it comes from such a history of Christianity. So I like to call myself a spiritual caregiver, but I do like to use the word chaplain because I think it kind of makes people kind of go, huh? Which I love, because I also think art needs to do that too. It's kind of like invoke more questions and provide answers. So it feels kind of like a little revolutionary act every time I introduce myself as a chaplain and people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah. So I have a Master's of Divinity, which sounds like I studied at Hogwarts. And that essentially means that I spent 3 years, but I took 4 years because it's a pretty arduous process of essentially just studying theology and religion and spirituality. I studied at a Buddhist college, so my MDiv was mostly focused on Buddhist studies, but I do identify as interfaith. So yeah, a Master's of Divinity is kind of like a finishing degree in the religious studies, and it gives you kind of it opens the doors to do spiritual caregiving chaplaincy work.
That is by far some uniquely amazing work you're doing for our community. You know, you've held space for so many as a chaplain, as a healer, as a witness. But let me flip that for a second. And if you, sitting across from your younger self, could pour up a cup of tea, hold space for her, the version of you who was still figuring it out, still searching, what's the tea you'd spill? What would you tell her about power, about softness, about what's to come?
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking about her when I was coming over here because I knew this was one of the questions, and I was like, she's with me and she's coming along today. I think I tell her that it's okay to break the rules, and you absolutely have to, especially being a woman in a society where a lot of the rules were made to keep us small, keep us well behaved, whatever. So just, I think I would want her to know that you can break the rules. You don't have to be good. It's not about being good. It's about being authentic. And really owning your own authenticity, and also not being concerned if people like you. Like, don't be concerned about that. Don't be concerned about being nice all the time. It's like authenticity has a little bit of an edge to it. It has boundaries. It has owning your own space and really standing on a ground of an opinion, and like really claiming your own stake in the world and being like, you know, this is what I stand on. And not everyone's going to like that. Not people aren't going to agree with it. And it's going to be difficult sometimes to feel like maybe you're not liked, but it's okay. It's not what it's about. It's about, at the end of the day, liking yourself.
That part. Because so much of this world teaches us to be likable, God bless, before we're ever taught to be whole. But what you said, that's not about being liked. It's about liking yourself. That's the kind of clarity that hits different when you've lived it. And honestly, that might be the most sacred tea of all. Well, folks, that's part 2 with Carly Sinn, artist, healer, intuitive, and walking, talking realignment. Carly, thank you so much for showing up with your full self, for bringing us truth that's tender, reflection that's rigorous, and a reminder that embodiment is its own revolution. You didn't just speak, you offered a practice, a rhythm, a reckoning, a real one. Biggest congratulations to Carly on her acceptance into the NYU graduate program. This journey is just the beginning, and the world is catching up. Be sure to follow her at Carly Sinn, Sinn with an S, to keep up with her work, her movement, and let's be real, to find her dancing through the Denver streets and art scene like the multi-dimensional force we know she is. If this episode cracks something open in you, sit with it, journal, breathe, or better yet, create, because the antidote to extraction is expression, and we're reclaiming both. Make sure you're following the AC Pulse on all platforms, and don't just listen, share it. That's how we disrupt the narrative. That's how we make waves. So stay pulsing, stay building, and stay rising. Till next time, we'll see you this weekend on our commentary episodes. Thanks for listening. I'm out.